Hey, Jodi, welcome to Age Better.
Oh, thank you. I'm bizarrely, fabulously excited to be here with you.
I really couldn't wait for this conversation because I thought, oh my gosh, I am obsessed with dying. And so, especially now that I'm at this age, I'm in my 60s, I'm like, yeah, I'm a little bit more focused on these things now. But I've got this huge closet in my apartment, and I feel, oh my gosh, I do not want to die and leave it to my two daughters and husband to
Yeah.
have to deal with. I just do not want to do that. So it's kind of top of mind. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah, so I
respect
said,
that. Swedish
oh,
death cleaning.
totally. And in fact, I've had an episode focusing on that. Yeah, I'm gathering all the information that I can now to get ready.
You are going to die beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Yay. Okay, Jodi. So, I mean, I know that you can make this funny, but you describe yourself as a corporate executive turned death enthusiast, which might be the most interesting, like fascinating career pivot in the history of career pivots. So tell us the backstory. How did this happen? Why did it happen?
Yes. What happened to you? Right. And it's just funny as you were saying that I was realizing that there is not an option on LinkedIn for professions as death enthusiasts. That doesn't quite exist yet.
Doesn't come up, does
we might
it? No.
petition them.
Yeah.
It's also funny the way you asked your question, of course, made me giggle and think right now about how it does sound as though corporate America perhaps literally killed me and had me then just turn to death instead. It's like, I can't take this executive life anymore. I'm just going to talk about mortality all day.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. Like they're going through that too. Am I dead?
Exactly. So I have a pulse, but it's faint. Well, I don't know if you can identify with this, but and many of your listeners, I'm sure, you have these notions and dreams and ideas that you kind of carry around with you for a while, that you think, oh, I'd love to be able to do this, but I don't know how to do it. And so then you get stuck and you don't do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or, you have this story you tell yourself like, well, I can't go back to school for that because I've been doing this career for 17 years, of which now I will look at you very squintingly and say, you're not dead yet. But I had this passion and enthusiasm for this topic of memento mori, which is that Latin phrase that means remember we must die. I've always been fascinated by it, the whole carpe diem ethos. And once I went back to school for grad school for positive psychology at UPenn, and that for me cracked me open and made me think, I can't not do this now. So it's almost like one of those things where when you let passion take over and you let the flames engulf you, and that actually sounds awfully morbid, so I should change the metaphor. But when you allow your passion to take root, let's go with that one.
Yeah, root.
It is something where it becomes like, I just need to make room for this. And it will be really ironic also if here I am talking from the mountaintops about how life's short, let's live like we mean it. And then I had this dream inside me that I wasn't letting come out. I had to kind of put my money where my mouth was and actually say, well, then I'm going to have to also change my career and live my life in such a way that I am practicing remembering we will die as a motivator.
And was there an incident that happened with you that made you start to think a bit more about death?
Well, I do track it back to my mom dying when she was 58. And it was a kind of key moment for me. And it's not the typical story you'd think of, oh, sorry, gone too soon. I mean, that's true too. But it was actually more of a story that I will bring myself back to visually, where I was cleaning out her place after she died. And not only did she have like 6 animals, it was a menagerie, but she had this really big desk. Yeah. We took one of the animals. My husband and I adopted her cat, so that was lovely.
Yay.
But back to your whole thing is you open up this closet and you're like, I got to take care of this, right?
I have got, yeah. I do not want to leave that for them. And I'm being serious now. No joke.
Right. Okay.
And
we're going to hold you accountable. We are coming up with an action plan by the time we're done our chat. But anyway, well, my mom, it wasn't so much. I mean, she had a lot of stuff. Let me tell you, she had a lot of hobbies, which is actually part of the point I'm going to make here is that she had so many dreams and intentions that she didn't take action on. As I was cleaning out her drawers and her laptop and her closet, she had all these business plans and manuscripts, short stories, and all the things. She even printed out business cards. She had all the dreams and none of the action. Wow. And it pained me to think about this poor, sweet, lovely mom, this lovely woman dying with all of her dreams stuffed inside of her. And to be super honest, it's slightly hereditary. I have inclinations also to dream and not do. And it made me realize
I think we all do. So many of us
right.
do. Yeah.
Well, we're right. I mean, so many reasons. We're busy, we're scared, fill in the blanks. And it just woke me up. It really woke me up to say, life is too short, potentially shorter than we even bargained for. Why are we waiting to pull the trigger on these really cool, potential, amazing things in our lives?
Yeah.
That was a wake up for me.
That was a learning moment, as they say. So, okay, I first discovered you when Emily Labor Warren, who is just an incredible woman, an incredible writer, and she wrote an article for the New York Times, and you were a big part of that article. And the article was about life reviews. Like, if you're feeling stuck, maybe you should do a life review, like going back in your life and kind of reviewing to see patterns of behavior and so on and so forth. Really great.
Yeah.
I had her on my show. We had a great conversation, and you were a big part of the conversation. And I said, okay, got to have you on the show. But talk about, and this is what you talked with Emily about for her article, but how confronting mortality can help you get unstuck, but confronting it, not running from it. So, so how did you discover during this journey that you've been on and are still on, thank you very much for being on for us, is the best way to light a fire under someone is to have them kind of focus on their funeral?
Yeah. It's so counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I want to promise everybody listening who may be just barely hanging on, like, where's this death conversation going to go? I promise it's motivating. It's not meant to be morbid.
Totally.
And there's the right dose of morbid, because here's what I have learned primarily. And this is through studying it. And I feel admittedly like I needed the validation of some science to really make me feel like this is more than just a seize the day on a mug. For me, it was about, what is this rooted in? And in positive psychology, the science that I'm from, but any other kind of behavioral science, what is true is this idea, it's called temporal scarcity. And it's this idea that when we perceive any kind of asset to be temporary or rare, limited time only, our value in it spikes. And it works with our lives. And full well, just like we all do, we tend to take life for granted, right?
Oh, yeah.
We just think, I'm going to get to do that later. Or we get into autopilot because we just kind of succumb to the same routines day after day. It makes life easy, but it also numbs us, and it just makes us kind of not really enjoy the life that we've imagined for ourselves. And so we take life for granted, and we think, oh, I'm going to do that cool thing when I retire. Or, oh, I'm going to do that thing when work dies down, which I'm definitely going to give you that look. And we do this because that's how we're wired. And yet, if we tune in to that temporal scarcity idea and we say, oh, but honey bunny, you only have 4,000 Mondays in total, roughly. And when I do the math, so I know I've got 1,809 as of this week, that is sucks to be true, but unfortunate reality that can be the very impetus to make us say, whoa, wait, my time is limited. Of course, we know this rationally, but now I see it with granularity. And this now is going to be the thing that helps me to take it seriously, or maybe for some people less serious, let's be honest. It's the thing that makes me see it as precious and as valuable and not as likely to take for granted.
Yeah, it's incredible. And let's get back to that, the 4,000 Mondays. That is the name of your website, which is great. And I really want everyone to start plugging into that because you have a regular email, which I'm now on. I'm getting those. And I find them funny, but also very, very motivating. So 4,000 Mondays. It's probably one of the most depressing math calculations that I've come across recently, or, a brilliant wake-up call, which of course I really think it is. So what happens when people actually calculate their Mondays, as you just did? You just calculated for us, thank you, how many Mondays you have left, probably. And, are you responsible for any midlife crises? You would take credit for it?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
After they figure out how many they have left?
Well, I am always asked, so my favorite thing to do, it would be keynotes and workshops. And I ask people, so I do a thing where I get people calculating. And I call it, it's your mortality math. And if this is going to ruin your day, of course, I do have a calculator on my website in case, because math alone is like, thanks anyways. Adding in mortality, it's double whammy, no. But the very act of doing it it's a necessary nudge. And back to that idea about science, and back to the idea about how I will often lament this because as a positive psychology practitioner, I wish we were wired to just be inspired and motivated and then take initiative to go after the lives we long to live.
Mm-hmm.
And some people on some days do that. Every now and then I get a weird motivational boost. It's probably caffeine related and I may go after a goal. But unfortunately, what many of us need is that, back to that scarcity heuristic, the loss aversion theory, the whole thing about what we might lose. So when I get people calculating, I'm typically asking, because I want to get real. I want numbers, and people are funny enough that they'll throw out their numbers, and I give prizes out because I just want to reward people for telling me basically how old they are and how much time they have left. And I ask people, what was it like? And undoubtedly, if somebody has more than half, so these are the folks that are a little bit younger in the group, they're like 2,900. I don't even know if that math works here, but for them, they think, wow, it actually sounds like a nice long time. And I'm like, for you right now, it is. And then for other people who are in and around the halfway mark, or sometimes, there are sometimes where there's a minus Mondays in the group, right? People who have lived longer than women at 83 and men at 78, the average life expectancy.
Right.
And that does bring up really necessary feelings of discomfort. And I say necessary on purpose. I'm not trying to make anybody spin off into an existential crisis. I like to cause a bit of an existential nudge.
Yeah.
And it is uncomfortable. And what we know to be true about psychology is that you need a little bit of that discomfort in order to initiate any kind of change or action.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we're more motivated to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Back to that, too bad we're wired this way, but we are. So, okay, I will work with it. With my partner, the Grim Reaper, I'm going to be there and help us calculate and remind us and say, so in light of that, what do you want to get on with? Because you can see undeniably life's short. So I did a presentation in Portland recently, and I had a follow-up call on Zoom with a woman who was in the audience. We just we connected, and I love to chat to anybody. So she told me, upon doing her Monday calculation, that she said to herself, how many more of these remaining Mondays do I want to wake up and go to my current job? And her answer was none of them.
None.
And so in her instance, by the way, I'm not trying to ruin people's lives. I'm not
like
a bomb detonating.
Major life pivots. Oh my God, I could see where that could happen.
Right. I am not a home wrecker. I'm not here to create bankers. I'm not here to create you, but I do. And hey, if a massive life change is what you need, you be the judge. For most of us, it's this small stuff. But for her, it was, I do not want to be doing this. And so she is making a conscious choice now, having left her job to start something that is going to stoke her passion. And so that
bring
to
her
me
some
is a
joy.
really, it's unusual. I trust me. Anybody who's thinking about me for a keynote, don't worry. People are not going to be leaving your company. But I will say that sometimes it's the exact perspective we need to say, how do I want to spend this valuable, precious time?
Yes. Couldn't agree more. This is really incredible. Now, you wrote a book and you put all of this, a lot of what you've said so far and so much more into this really great book. You Only Die Once. And the subtitle is How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. That's a goal. I mean, I think that's like one of my big life goals. Like, who wants regrets? I very often say to people, I don't have any regrets. I have a few little ones. Like, gee, why didn't I invest in such and such back in 1978? Right. Something like that. Right? Yeah. Things like that. But no major regret. And so I think I'm a little lucky in that respect. I don't know. But so this book, did you think that people were going to seriously buy a book that kind of like in a very humorous way talked about dying as a motivator? And it's doing very well.
Right. Like really?
So I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah. Here's the way that I think I learned early on that it needed to be packaged.
Mm-hmm.
It needed to be wrapped in a little bit of this, the goofy irreverence that I just cannot show up with. I needed to doodle the Grim Reaper. Okay, I do all my drawings. And I realized early on, if I'm going to get up and do a presentation and tell people, oh, hey, yeah, you're totally dying. I need it to be jarring in the right way, but also, okay, if I had a giggle, it's going to make this pill a little bit easier to swallow.
Yes.
So I do think that also even my color choices. I mean, I wear black a lot, but most of my
I was going to wear black
right.
today, and I decided to go with gray just to kind of have a little happy medium.
Right, as did I. I muted the death for you today, Barbara. So we're on the same wavelength. But I will say that I've been pleasantly surprised at how interested people are. It's we're morbidly curious people out there, and we are, there's a reason we slow down to, look at car crashes. It's sort of like this weird feeling we have of, I don't want to look, I don't want to look, I want to look, I want to look. Could that happen to me? And we all know it's coming. And that's why this is it's like a push-pull topic. It's repelling because it's that I don't want to think about this crappy topic. And it's also attracting because but it's in my future and I can't deny that. And so if I can catapult us fast, like I am very clear, I'll talk about the fact that, time's limited. Let's do the calculation. And then I want to move on quickly and flip the script to not talk about dying, but to talk about living. That's the trick in all this magic trick.
Exactly. Now let's get to a talk that you gave, a TED Talk, which is amazing. Again, everyone, there'll be links to all of this, the book, the TED Talk, the website, everything in the show notes. Please take a look after you're done listening to this conversation. But your TED Talk was exactly that. It was called How Death Can Bring You Back to Life, right? So, and it's had well over 1 million views and counting. So it just keeps on getting viewed and downloaded and all that great stuff and shared, which means that there really are quite a few people out there who are morbidly curious about death and how that can make you be motivated to live maybe your best life ever. And so did you, when you were up there on the stage and did you say, I'm standing on that red dot on this TED Talk stage and wow, people really want to hear this? What were you thinking?
Right, I love it. We're not the only weirdos. People are
exactly.
Well, it was a fabulously surreal moment, and I was very conscious. And I do this actually with all my presentations because, again, this is the thing I tune into just as a sidebar. One big question I ask of people is what makes you feel most alive? And then, of course, the answer is whatever that is. Try to rig your life to do more of it. For me, talking on a stage about this topic, there could be nothing more alivenating for me, and I risk losing myself in it because it's just so I'm carried away by this current of passion, and I'm very clear that I want to be present in those presentations about the experience that's happening in the moment and my own, just sort of selfishly. So in that red dot, very much holy cow. Now it would have been rude if they got up and left. So that was that.
I don't think people ever really do that, but they also don't all get 1 million views and counting. So that's
thank you.
Very meaningful information. That's a very meaningful stat. So you must have gotten a lot of reactions over the years that you've been doing this from people when you give talks or, reaction to your website on social media. You have a great social media following. I have links to all of that as well in the show notes.
Thank you.
But what were some of the more memorable comments and reactions you've got? And a follow-up to that is I'm really curious. I bet sometimes you encounter people who are totally into this. I get it. I get it. I have to count my Mondays. I'm going to get motivated to do the things I really want to do. But then they maybe have a husband or a wife or a partner or, whatever in life who's no, Nick say, no. It's Dracula. I don't want to talk about death. Never. No. It's I'm sure that's come up too. How the heck do you deal with that? Oh, I'm
totally
asking for a friend, by the way.
Purely hypothetical. So you just reminded me of a time where I was on a little TV segment and there were, 4 co-hosts and I was getting them to do their math. And one woman of the 4 was nope, I am not playing this game. And if anything, I was energized because I was right, tell me more. I just come alive with and I wasn't trying to crack her, but that was actually one kind of funny moment. And that is rare, and here's why. Number one, people are going to self-identify when I am on a break in a workshop or doing a keynote or something. They're going to be oh, we're like-minded, and they're going to come up and they're going to talk. The people who don't love it are just not going to come up and interact with me. So that, number one, there's a little bit of a self-selection or self-deselection that I wouldn't be aware of. However, there was a time I did a presentation, and I remember being in Nashville, and I remember when I asked, how many Mondays do you have left? One woman, she was a very seemingly balanced woman. She said, the math says that I've got, let's just say 1,900, but I have a sense that it's probably going to be only like 100. And her whole team, it was with her whole team. They looked at her like, I'm sorry, say what? And she was not suicidal. It was that she just said, I've always had this sense that I'm going to die early.
Wow.
And so it was a profound moment of discussion. And we didn't then, shine the spotlight, glaringly on her. But it actually illustrated a lot of the point that because she personally believed by whatever intel she had that she was going to die early, she was living with a far more sense of deliberate intention because she knew if my time is super duper limited, I'm going to get on with traveling and doing all the things that were on her bucket list in a way that the rest of us around the room were kicking back like, I've still got 1908. So it was an interesting conversation.
That's really interesting. And so she was really already on the path.
She was. I mean, she was super sold on memento mori. She was
you could bring her along with you on your talks and just hold her up as a great example.
I should have done that. I should have taken her against her will.
Yeah. So let's talk about bucket lists. I mean, that's something, overused term, but, we all get what that is. Easy to say. Bucket list. I'm going to go to India, which in fact I am doing. My husband and I are doing it in September 2025. We're very excited about it. So there are some bucket lists that we have, but you really do say that like things like skydiving in Bora Bora, and other things like that may not be the golden ticket to a fulfilling life. So talk to us about that.
Well, by the way, I have this visual, just your example about skydiving in Bora Bora is funny because I'm like, do they have is it safe there to skydive in Bora Bora? But that's not why I have funny feelings, but I just kind of wondered how regulated is it? But anyway, different topic.
I don't know what made me say that, but
nothing against the Bora Borans. I'm sure you are organized with your skydiving. Anyway.
I'm sure they don't, but there you have it.
Someone can chime in. I have very, feelings about bucket lists that will vary. And I think that the concept of identifying stuff you would love to do before you go, very good. Most of us, well, actually 72% of Americans have bucket lists. So there's an inkling that, yay, these are the things I'm going to do. Here is where I get leery, is that I believe they just become later lists. And it's a repository for dreams, kind of like my mom's desk and her drawers for, good for me. I recorded India, or I recorded that I want to write a book, or I recorded that I want to learn how to speak Cantonese. And I wrote it down and I closed the journal, or I X'd out the spreadsheet. And then I went and I answered my emails for the day. And I would say, if there's not a column next to the idea with a little bit of a time frame.
Yeah.
Then like you said India, September 2025.
It's done. It's booked. Yeah.
Yes. So that's where the energy is. And I do think that there's something special. Yes, I love riffing. Every fourth night over cocktails, my husband and I are dreaming about other things we want to do. And sometimes it's just fun to fantasize. The issue, though, and this is actually one of the scientifically studied aspects called positive fantasies. Sometimes we get just enough of a lift from fantasizing about a thing we want to do, a goal we want to pursue, that, yay, we feel good about it. And then it causes us to not take action. And so you have a bucket list, but I want you to also promise that you're going to have a
real to-do list too. So a bucket list, it's interesting. I never really, I don't know why I didn't think of this, but the visual of just literally a metal bucket and you're throwing things in there, and some of them can just stay in there, stay in that bucket, never to see the light of day. Is your point?
Right.
Yeah, that's so interesting. One thing that I've often talked about with experts, and then when I'm just talking to the audience directly about what's stopping you, and very often it's fear of not being able to succeed. And you mentioned writing a book. I wrote my first book when shortly after turning 50, because I needed a guide. Decided, all right, I'm going to write the book. Had fear of who am I to write a book? I didn't have that background. I just entered, because of that book, into the world of positive aging and healthy aging.
Yes.
Before that,
love it.
Do you know what I'm saying? I let fear stop me. Well, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, most likely.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. You are hitting on something that I don't think I even went into enough in You Only Die Once, the book. And this now is like a new drum I'm beating louder. It'll never be as loud as the Counter Mondays drum, but regardless, it's this thing we do where we postpone our existence. It's just this natural, we have a dream, and it could be a bucket list kind of thing, like a fantastical notion, or it could be any kind of a goal. It could be about go back to school. It could be making up with, a relative that you've had this nasty relationship with. It could be, you fill in the blanks, anything you kind of long to do, small, big, large. We tend to say, I'm going to do it later. And we dupe ourselves into thinking that I will do it when I retire, or I'll do it when the slow period at work, which again, like, when's that happening?
Yeah.
We are always putting it off for this mystery land of later. That, okay, on one hand, it's sort of a delusional, like it's a comfort zone to think, okay, yeah, I'll get to pack it up and put it over here. I have now come to think, and this is through empirical evidence and also just anecdotal evidence, that it's more about fear that is holding us back. It's convenient to have an excuse that I'm too busy right now. Sometimes it is literal, like I don't have the money to do the around the world cruise that I am going to do, but sometimes you do need to save the money or whatnot. But the deferral, I think we need to be highly suspicious of ourselves about, because it's usually an indication of, like you said, fear of who am I to do this? It's about fear of rejection, fear of failure. Sometimes it's fear of success, fear of, you fill in all fears.
Yeah.
And if we, like, even, Seneca, it takes courage to live. We do need to summon up courage. And one other thing I'll nerd out on for a minute is that there are a lot of scientific studies on character strengths. And one of the most empirically, rigorously reviewed, peer-reviewed, is called the VIA character strengths. And you can go to viacharacter.org and fill out a free online 10-minute character strengths assessment. And one of the 24 universally studied character strengths is called zest. Zest is like one of my number one, like, lust for life, like calm down kind of sometimes for some of us. And one of the things that has fascinated me about zest is that it is housed in a category called courage. And it doesn't make sense initially. Like, if you're just zesty, joie de vivre, suck the marrow out of the bone of life. That does require courage in order to set aside a comfort zone, in order to go after a dream that may or may not come true, and it might make you look like an idiot, in order to risk possibly someone not saying I love you back, or maybe not getting the big job you apply for, or maybe not having your Etsy store pan out the way you wanted, or maybe not having your book sell as many copies as you fathomed, all the things. And yet, and this is the thing that I just want to keep coming back to for us, is that if we fast forward to our deathbeds, because, we got to bring death back for a quick sec. If we imagine that feeling we would have at the end, back to regrets, about that bitter taste of, I always wanted to write that book and I didn't, or I always wanted to start the Etsy shop and I just didn't, I just too chicken. That is a very grotesque feeling compared to, man, I set that shop up and I gave it my all and it didn't work out, but I'm so proud that I tried, So which life would you rather live?
Question for you on that. I believe in the whole nature versus nurture thing. I think a lot of us do pop out zestful with a little more zest, I think, than others. For example, I have a sister, and I can assure you that we're completely different. And my two daughters are really completely different. I popped out like, let's go. And that was always me. I've been told that for years. That was always me as a little kid. And I just still continue to have that zest for life. I, don't want to sound kooky, but yes, I have it. Now, what do you say to people who are, a little less zestful by nature? I guess you just have to find it, right? You have to kind of dig down deep and pull it out.
Oh,
right?
What a good question. Yeah, you just made me think about, maybe we could call like the zestless. A little more. So let's look at this, because you are super right. It's the personality traits are often, neither some nature and nurture. Some people, there's the big 5 personality traits. Openness to experience is one of them. That intent, like, wow, I want to go and try a new brunch place this weekend. That's typically more zesty than someone who's like, I'll just like my same omelet at the same diner, thanks. In which, don't not eat this amazing omelet.
Right.
I do think that, so there are tendencies also, introversion, extroversion, which can translate sometimes to that lust for life. So yes, we can come by it by our wiring. And I will also say, I am not here to diagnose a problem that doesn't need diagnosing. If you don't feel your life is needing zest, So I'm not judging that somebody is zesty, not zesty, stick in the mud, whatever it is. What I pay attention to and I ask people to do is say, do you feel like you need more width in your life, which is the way the axis I equate to needing more vitality?
Yes.
And then the depth is equating to more of a sense of meaning and purpose. And zest can exist on both, but it's often about vitality, that sense of, am I having enough fun and pleasure? Am I trying different things? Am I experiencing enough out of life? Am I participating in life? And that question is only something you can answer. So somebody who might ostensibly be a bit zestless might say, oh my gosh, I feel vitally alive. I read a chapter in my murder mystery book today.
Yes.
The life is brimming out of me. And I would high five you and say, rock on. And in fact, that sounds pretty good to me too. Someone else might say, I am only feeling zesty if I have met 3 new people today and we went on roller coasters and then we went out for a tasting menu. And that to me is zesty. And I would say, well, are you getting enough of that to fill your zesty bucket? So it's relative.
It's totally relative. You're so right. You're so right. And skydiving in Bora Bora, of course. So for people who are listening in right now, and I know many are or will be, and they're thinking, oh, great. Now I'm having an existential crisis along with my midlife crisis, and I'm not really sure what to do. Is there like a tip, an exercise that they could do right now? What can somebody do right now that will kind of get them on the path to viewing, death less about anxiety, and more about how I can have a better, more fulfilling life?
Oh, such a good question. Yes. And by the way, how could anybody be having an existential crisis after all of our fabulous jokes today? I mean, this is good stuff, right? We are linking arm in arm with the Grim Reaper. But anyway, I totally get what you're saying. Yes. Matt, this conversation is eye-opening in an important way. And I of course, I poke fun at it, and I do want to acknowledge the gravity of it, is that we're talking about the end of ourselves, and that is a supremely dispiriting notion. And I would say the first thing, if you're feeling those bubbling angst, it's just acknowledge it and kind of almost like appreciate a little bit of that feeling about crap, because that does mean that you appreciate living. It means that you still have life left in you that you want to live. And that's where I'm going to then really put the energy and say, shift your energy from there's not enough time, if that's sort of that scarcity trap, to, okay, I'm acknowledging that there's not enough, and there'll never be enough for all of us to do all the things we long to do, right?
No,
but
for sure.
It's sort of like, well, then in light of that, how do we use this and turn it into a really, really powerful sense of urgency without panic, a sense of like passion and deliberate. And I want to sit down and maybe recraft my bucket list and prioritize these things with dates. I want to get clearer on the things that I want in my life and that I don't want in my life in these remaining Mondays. And I want to get more intentional with it. So I do think it's like, acknowledge any of that fear or discomfort, appreciate it, and then shift into, so now what would make me feel really great if I wanted to fit in to my remaining Mondays, of which I may get more than this calculation and I may get less.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly right. So you've done a lot of research, for your book and just everything you do, your own research. You pen trained and all that great stuff. And so what are some of the best insights that you've kind of seen and heard when you've been on this journey of learning, that positive psychology?
Yeah. Okay. This one's standing out to me. And I like this one because it's for all of us.
Okay.
I do think that a little bit of living goes a long way. So I set us up, and I think I set us up sometimes for pressure, and I do not mean to, because I use words like astonishingly alive. Like I want us all to live wider and deeper, and then that puts us in this astonishingly alive quadrant. And I think some of us then feel like it needs to look a certain way, and it needs to have a certain number of trips and excursions and experiences and nonprofits that we start to change the world and all these things that it's like, I don't even have the energy to finish this sentence because it's so exhausting. And I would say, oh, wait, but what if we recalibrate and say, most of us, we're living busy lives and we're just doing our best, and we want to try and just like our lives, ideally love them a little bit more every day. But, we're holding on. And if we want to feel more alive in our remaining Mondays, let's not underestimate the impact of the small choices we make, even in 5-minute increments, that can make us feel alive. So it could be as simple as deciding to read a chapter on your lunch break. It could be about, I'm going to sit outside and have a coffee this morning outside, even if I have to bundle up. And what a different experience that is. It could be about making a decision to say, I'm going to text that friend of mine that we just fell off the wagon. And I just would say, hey, thinking of you, remember that time, and send a picture of, I don't know, whatever that funny picture is.
Yeah.
And something that, like a choice you can make, that if you can acknowledge, this is something that just makes me laugh or feel some kind of alive, or even if it's making a decision to say, wow, I've always been curious about pickleball. I'm going to register for lessons. Go online and sign up, and notice how your experience changes today, because you've got pickleball lessons coming up on 3 Fridays from now.
Yep.
So it's like, don't think that you have to book the trip around the world. Don't think you have to, volunteer every week at the soup kitchen. I mean, don't not do those things if they would really fit into your life and you'd love that. And don't overestimate the small things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such great advice. I heard an incredible conversation on NPR earlier today, and it was a conversation with Yo-Yo Ma, the famous cellist. He's now 69 years old, and he was talking about a lot of things. But what is very relevant to what we're talking about now, he was talking about how he's finding joy and meaning in small things throughout his day. He's living somewhere in the Smoky Mountains area, and he was talking about his relationship to nature, how it's changed, how he's viewing it now, and that he was kind of rhapsoding very quite poetically, and and it was really interesting because he then said, he kind of stopped and laughed at himself, and he said, well, listen to me, I'm 69, I can say these things now, but if I said everything I just said when I was 20, you'd be like, come on, move on now. So I bet that I'm assuming that the majority of the people who come to your talks and workshops and the like, and who really pay attention to what you're saying, are older. I'm not saying old, but maybe are midlife.
Yeah, great question. The audiences do tend, so it's more of the professional audiences if they're coming for an association or an annual meeting at a company.
Sure, so then that's different.
The average would be, I'd say, middle age, that maybe there's more resonance. However, there is this sort of YOLO aspect, you only live once, that is typically characterized by youth, and that's backed up by science. There's this concept, socio-emotional selectivity theory, which means that when we're young, we just want to drink from the fire hose of life, learn new things, do cool things. And as we get older, we tend to value more about connection and meaning. So that story arc does track. And there is just as much of an appetite to live for the youthier folks, that are like, oh my gosh, I have 2,700 Mondays. And it's still about, great, and how do you want to craft them? And how do you want to be? And so I do actually think that the cool part is that the audience that I'm talking about, as I sometimes refer, because I think I'm just so clever, it's like for people who might die someday. So it's everybody. I mean, I was at a meeting last week where a guy was 14 Mondays in the hole because he was 78 and change, and he was like, I'm still trucking on and living. And then I was also at an audience where they were families, and there was a young gal there, and she was just so excited to be talking about what made her feel vitally alive, widening. And she's like, I'm watching movies with my family, and we're sharing popcorn and treats, and we get to talk about the movie after. And first of all, isn't that amazing for all of us at any age? So I do think that this idea about savoring the flavor of life, man, it's ageless.
It's ageless. It is. It's ageless. Wow, Jodi, this was a great conversation. It was so much fun, and I'm so glad that I was able to actually talk to someone who could validate my feelings about, it's okay to kind of, acknowledge that you're going to die someday. Now what?
Exactly. In fact, it's encouraged.
Get the
it's
closet
encouraged.
clean. Do you have a service where you come over and you help some of the people you talk to clean up their closets and do stuff like that? So before I let you go, before we wind down, can you give us your top, we talked about so much, your top 3 takeaways from our conversation today?
Yeah. Well, I love this. Yeah. so something struck me that we didn't articulate even, but I think because there is fear about death, it's that there's a cool relationship between how we can decrease our fear of death if we increase the degree to which we're living. So a lot of people will feel near the end like, oh, I don't want to die because I have this fear of an unlived life. So the answer is, let's go live life. And then what that does is it gives us that satisfaction of like, I've shown up, I've done cool. I'm crossing items off my list, or I am appreciating it. And I am somehow, the end doesn't feel as threatening because it threatens us when we feel like we may have the coulda, shoulda, woulda regrets at the end. So that's one. The next one, I'd be remiss if I didn't double down on like count your Mondays. Every single freaking Monday. Fine, I'll let you off the hook. You can do it every other. But just stay in touch with that diminishing number as that motivator, the spark plugs that we might need. And then, the third one is sort of related to that. It's like, so what? It's not just counting it to be morbid. It's the third point I would say is, what are you waiting for? You have a heartbeat, which means you have ideas and hopes and desires and things that you long to do. And now that we've acknowledged that we're all just chicken and that life's short anyway, we're all dying. You're dying right now, very slowly, imperceptibly, I hope. You're dying. What do you have to lose? Go do it. Register for the course. Apply. Try it. Change the job. Go. Make the move. Go. Register. Change your hair. Do the thing you long to do, because you know what? Poof. It could be gone in an instant. Let's just have fun while we're here.
Yay! Oh my God, that was so motivating. Yay! Woo! Okay. Wow. Jodi, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you come back because this was a lot of fun. This was too much fun. It was too much fun talking about that.
No such thing.
Knew?
No such thing.
No such thing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.